American football in Finland.
The voice in your ears is Perfect Pervis, and this is American Football in Finland. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Q and Chris Green. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on?
How's it going, guys? Good to have the band back together again.
Yes, sir.
The AFF podcast is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're currently available on more than 25 different platforms. The show is also available on our YouTube channel. Wherever you listen, be sure to rate us. Anything less than 5 stars will tell us that you are a hater. Today, we're discussing the 2022 Maple League playoffs. This weekend, 4 teams will compete for a chance to play in the 43rd Vattaramalja. The Kuopio Steelers, Helsinki Wolverines, Seinäjoki Crocodiles, and Helsinki Roosters each have played well enough this season to make it to the postseason. This will be a long one if you're listening, so we'll try to wrap up the regular season before diving into this week's playoff matchups. It's first down. We get a chance to start fresh and discuss whatever is on our minds. Q, what's going on with you first?
It's playoffs, baby. The main thing that's on my mind right now is playoffs. I've been waiting on this. Everybody's been waiting on this. It's finally time. This show with all that money spent, all that time that you spent playing together, it's time to pay off now. So, hey, you got to put your money where your mouth is this week.
What about you, Chris? What's going on with you, man?
Well, I just had a holiday in Egypt, as you know, for 11 nights. Nice bit of R&R. Really good time. Decent country, very reasonably priced as well. And we got to experience some good things like quad biking and dirt buggying, and we did a scuba dive as well. We visited this like Orange Bay Island where it was like a kind of like a fake Maldives vibe to it. But yeah, it was really sound, and it was nice to get away. It's the first holiday I've had in like 3 years since COVID. So yeah, it was good to get away and just chill and relax for 11 days.
Must be nice. Just get a little relaxation. Okay. I wouldn't know what that's like, guys. I missed another fantasy football draft. Q, didn't we talk about this last week? Was it with you when I told you I missed the draft and then I had another one the next week? Well, I was in Helsinki. We had 7-on-7 practice on Sunday, and I'm at the practice, and after practice, me and my daughter go out to the park to play. So that meant I was about an hour late getting back to Lahti. And I didn't realize that I thought my draft was like 10 o'clock, but it was like 9 o'clock. And I get on at like 9:30. And I'm the commissioner. I'm running the league. And there was some issues with roster spots and some trades that didn't go through. And I don't get there till halfway through the draft. I'm spending all this week fixing my fantasy league because now I got people saying we should redraft, or people saying, hey, I want my money back, or hey, can we at least change the rules? So I got to deal with all that. So, that's what's going on with me, guys. Fantasy football is in motion. NFL starts this week, so I'm excited about that. But since my fantasy is a little up and down, I'm going to have to fix that. So that's it for me for first down. Fantasy. Another Maple League season in the books. We did this last year, so we're going to bring it back this year. Let's talk about some of the top storylines, some of the drama or, running jokes of this season. Chris, what was one of the top storylines of the 2022 season for you?
So my first storyline is going to be about Shea Netter. He actually led the league in passing yards. He passed for 2,512 yards and 26 passing touchdowns. So he's tied top for the most passing touchdowns, and he's top for the most passing yards. He's also top for the most interceptions thrown as well. But it just goes to show that there was something that they could work with on that UNC team. If they had a few upgrades maybe on that defense, they may have been competitive and may have been able to sneak into that fourth spot. But, I'm clutching at straws here, but him leading the league in passing is a big thing. And Rojo did that, I think, a few seasons ago when he was there with UNC as well. So they seem to have the passing offense down, even if he's got guys in some of the throws he's been making this season, guys in his face coming through. It's like 1, 2, ball's got to be out like before 2 because he's got, 1, 2, maybe 3 guys in his face. So it makes that passing yardage even more impressive that he's leading the league.
I think that's a good point you make, and it is going to lead me to what I think was the storyline of this year was how and why did the Cookie Eagles get in the Maple League? Because I think it was one of those situations where I'm a little bit close to the Eagles organization, and I have some familiarity with them. And I've seen them play in Division One, and we just kind of assumed that they would have similar success or at least be competitive, and they were not competitive. It's a little bit different than, dealing with the Royal situation of last year where he's like, oh, did they just take a year off? Or even the year before when the Butchers pretty much tanked, and you're just like, oh, the organization's just not doing what they're supposed to do. Or you could take it how you want to, but both of those organizations bounce back. But this team, you never felt like, okay, they got something going. Like you said, at least with UNC, they were able to put up points. They were able to get yards. Like that offense, you couldn't just take them lightly. I mean, you probably could score on them easily, but you still had to play the whole game. The Eagles team, you giving up what, 70, 80? Did they give up 90 to anybody this year? I don't know. But they're giving up basketball scored numbers. And then it's not like they're losing 90 to, I mean, they're not losing like 70 to 34. They're losing 70 to 7. So they're not even scoring. And that's just one of those things that it makes the whole league look bad when one team is just not competitive to everyone else. I don't know why they weren't competitive. I can't speak on that. I'm not in the, organization like that, but it's just one of those storylines that all year, just you knew you had a W when you played them, and it just kind of watered down the league that's supposedly one of the top leagues in Europe. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, there's not beat around the bush. They had no business being in the Maple League this season. I'm just looking at the stats now. They conceded 589 points on the season.
That's just sad. I mean, it's just one of those things that I feel like it just proves the difference between Division One and the Maple League, but then 2, the fact that the relegation and promotion system is tragically flawed. Tragically. But what about you, Q? What's something that was, a storyline for you this year?
I went another way. I went to the newly named Bad Boy Crocs, the old lineman for the Crocodiles. All year, these guys have had a running meme or a running video of them just doing some of the dirtiest stuff, punching in the crotches.
True, they nasty. They are nasty.
Yeah. Some holding, like these guys are just, I like it, but at the same time, it's like, all right, now we seeing it a little too much. Like now it's just becoming like too much. But I think it's funny that the Crocs just have this like bad boy O-lineman kind of like guys though. To the rest of the league, it's like, all right, here these guys go again. But they've been doing something dirty pretty much every game, and it's like right there in 4K. So I thought that was like pretty funny that the Crocs are like this. They're a playoff team. And hopefully they don't get these type of penalties and plays in the playoffs to where you like lose starting linemen and stuff like that. So. I thought that was pretty funny just to see the Crocs O-lineman just being in the butt of a lot of jokes this season.
I like it. I think it's one of those things that brings over the actual, spirit and culture of American football. If me and Q know from, personal experience, offensive linemen, them some of the nastiest, dirtiest sons of, that you ever come across because they have to be. They have to be. They're usually not as physically talented as their defensive counterparts. And then they get no love. So they have to do things that are, a little sketchy to get the job done. And if Christian Powell is your running back, you're going to get sketchy. You're going to get sketchy and say, it's worth it. I'll get sketchy for this guy. And I think that's something that they definitely have done well this year. Shout out to the Crocodiles O-line too. A lot of those guys are decent offensive linemen that don't get any credit. I do think that you have to look at both them and the Steelers offensive line and say, okay, some of these guys are really, really good because they're going against really good defensive players, but we're giving all the credit to the running back. That's not necessarily the case. But moving on, let's keep it going. We got a little bit of time. This is going to be a long one, like I said. What about some other storylines? I mean, it was 7 teams. We probably have 7 storylines. We got something else, Chris?
Yeah, just business as usual for the Steelers. I mean, they've steamrolled this league. They've gone undefeated. It seems like they're on the way to another Maple League championship again. In my opinion,
But
there's
are they
probably only one team that could compete with them.
I'm sorry, I don't want to jump
Go on.
you in here
Go
because
on.
this is perfect.
You go.
But are they a dynasty? Back
Of course
to
they are. I know Q going to disagree.
On the season, full
I know
circle.
Q going to disagree, but yes,
here we
they
go.
are a dynasty.
Here we go.
I mean, they went undefeated in the regular season. Q, what do you think? How do you feel about the Steelers' regular season right now, Q?
How do I feel about it? The Anthony Reasonover and the Steelers have had a great season. I do agree.
So David Ruffin and the
Yeah.
Temptations.
Yeah, I'll say it like that on purpose. I'm not taking anything away from the Steelers. I have watched their games all season, and I just feel like I just don't see the dominant aspect of the team yet.
How more dominant can they be? They're undefeated.
I don't see the dominant. Like it's not like when I watch them. I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm sold on the fact that they're just guaranteed they're gonna win the championship. They're not dominating that fast. Not saying that they're not a great team. I just feel like there's still room, which is every game. If they play the right team in the playoffs, that it'll be a demise. So yes, I didn't choose them to win the championship game, or they're a dynasty. Not yet. We'll see in September when the championship is played. We'll see. Then I'll call them a dynasty if they win. If they don't win, they're just another undefeated team in the regular season that came to the demise in the playoffs because they didn't really get majorly tested during the season. So we'll see.
I disagree. I think that the Wolverines have tested them.
Yeah.
Both games have been closely contested. I think the first one was 15-0, was it? And the second one was 13-12. So a two-score and a 1-point game.
That's because Lee Anthony's been bored.
he was making drama.
Or the boys nearly ran for 2,000 yards. And he's not even playing the whole game sometimes.
He's just making a dramatic.
He's got 30 touchdowns on the ground.
This is like pro wrestling, and he's The Rock. He's just trying to build it up for the crowd. He's just trying to make it something worth playing. But I think that's good on the storylines. Q, do you have anything else storyline wise?
The only storyline that we need to talk about is the Roosters surprising everybody and winning this championship. That's the only thing we need to talk about.
This guy became a fanboy at the end of the season. Roosters started playing well towards the end of the season.
This is who I chose.
Fanboy.
Hey,
you got to ride with him. Yeah.
I got to ride with him.
The only reason why the Roosters beat the Crocodiles last week is because the Crocodiles didn't have no CP15.
See?
Maybe so.
Simple as that. And I wouldn't have picked the Crocodiles to win if I'd have known he wasn't playing.
The only reason an ugly person is almost pretty is because they almost not pretty. But anyway. Anyway, let's get on with it, man. We'll see this weekend.
You reminded me. I did have one more storyline. Sorry, I'm gonna throw this one out here. But also because I saw it online, how ridiculous is it that to choose what seeding teams are for the playoffs, they do a coin flip?
A coin flip.
Like a coin flip. And you seen that on the what movie was that where it was like Permian Odessa in high school, like that high school football movie where they did a coin flip.
Oh, Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, Friday Night Lights. You saw that and you're like, oh man, that was epic. And then here it was just, Yuha and somebody from the Crocodiles on the side of the field flipping a coin with Rope flipping a coin or something. It's just weird. I don't know. I don't disagree or agree with it. I mean, if that's the rules, that's the rules. But damn, it has to suck to be the Senior Crocodiles who played great pretty much all season. And then didn't have CP against the Roosters, and that basically cost them home field advantage.
Was he hurt or was he just being rested?
I think just being rested, but I don't know. I wasn't in the locker room. I didn't ask anybody because I didn't think it was going to be that important, but it kind of is because now they're the 3 seed going to
The
Helsinki.
3 seed now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they do well in Helsinki. I mean,
He likes that velodrome.
It's just crazy that the season came down to 3 teams being 8-4. One team got the 2 seed because they won more away games, but then the other 2 teams, I guess they had the same amount of away game wins, so they had to flip for it. And I don't know. I've
Some weird tiebreakers. Yeah, weird tiebreakers.
Weird tiebreakers here. The flipping of the coin, I think that goes back to Friday Night Lights. I think that's a very old and antiquated way to do it. And, TIF. So why change, right? Just stick with it. And, yeah, those are some storylines just so y'all can chew on.
Welcome to a special edition of Inside the Numbers with your host, Chris Green. Today, we will look at the top individual and team performances of the entire season. Let's start with the top offensive performances of the year. Your leading rusher was none other than Leanthony Reesnover of the Kuopio Steelers. He had 234 carries for 1,763 yards at 7.5 yards per carry with a whopping 30 rushing touchdowns. He was averaging 146.6 rush yards per game. Those numbers are insane. The leading passer of the league was Shane Netter of the UNC Crusaders. He completed 180 of 353 attempts at 51% completion percentage. He threw 26 touchdowns and threw 17 interceptions. The leading wide receiver was Peter Anderson of the Kotka Eagles. He had 74 receptions for 979 yards and 6 TDs. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball. The leading tackler was linebacker Timmy Nuka of the Porvoo Butchers. He had 61 solos and 58 assists, which totaled 90. The sack leader was Akeem the Dream Allen from the Kuopio Steelers. He totaled 11 sacks on the season. And the interception leader, well, it was shared between 4 players, and each of these 4 players had 4 picks. We have Mateus Castaño of the UNC Crusaders, Ronnie Lane of the Kuopio Steelers, Curtis Slater of the Helsinki Wolverines, and Veiko Kallio of the Kotka Eagles. Let's turn our eyes to the team performances. In passing yards, Helsinki Roosters topped it with 2,649 passing yards and 28 passing touchdowns. Rushing yards, the Kuopio Steelers had a huge 2,633 rushing yards with a massive 45 rushing touchdowns. And then total yards was also the Kuopio Steelers, who had 4,709 total yards with 71 total touchdowns. Third down conversion percentage, we've got the Kuopio Steelers, who were 62 of 108, which worked at 57.4%. Defensively, passing yards, well, we've got a clean sweep here for the Kuopio Steelers. They topped every single category. And in passing yards, the Kuopio Steelers only gave up 1,624 passing yards. They gave up 238 rushing yards and only 6 rushing TDs for the entire season. They only gave up 1,862 yards of total offense and 21 total touchdowns. They also topped the third down conversion with only 36 of 127, which was 28.3%. Now, as it's a special edition of Inside the Numbers, we're going to look at a few niche stats. The most penalized team of the season was the Kuopio Steelers, who had a total of 98 penalties for 856 yards, which averaged at 71.3 yards per game. The highest turnover margin, we've got the Kuopio Steelers at plus 12. The worst turnover margin, we've got the UNC Crusaders at minus 12. The most sacks on the team were Kuopio Steelers with 38 total sacks, and the most sacked team was the UNC Crusaders with 39. And that's it going to be for Inside the Numbers for this season. Join us again, hopefully next season, we'll see you there.
Are you looking for quality football apparel and accessories at an affordable price? Rare Athletics is made for players by players. Head over to rare.se and get your drip today. That's REYRR.se. And use code AFF20 to receive 20% off all Rare brand products. Let's do tough questions. First game, Steelers versus Roosters. Q, give me a question for the Roosters.
How many points exactly do we want to beat these guys by? That's the question. Right?
Blasphemy.
And the Roosters 4 losses. I think besides one game, I don't think they lost for more than 17 points, 16, 17 points. Basically say 2-score games. And that's against everybody. 4 losses, and they only really lose by 2 touchdowns in those losses. So I think if you keep the lead within 1 score, I think the Roosters win the game.
Okay.
So you're forgetting the first game of the season, yeah? 49-20. The Steelers beat the Roosters.
Nobody
29 points.
Ain't nobody cares about the first game, all right? Nobody cares about that game at all.
But you just said a statement. You're not backing it up with the statistics here.
Nobody cares about that game at all. The first game is basically like a scrimmage for everybody. But we're talking about the last 3 losses. How about that? Maybe not the 4.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the last 3 makes sense because now you're talking about losses. That makes sense.
I think they'll be prepared. Like I said, I think they'll be prepared. So my question to the Roosters would be not the point question, but my question is, what are you going to do different in the last 2 times you played them? You have to do something different enough to stop reasoning over and put yourself in a position to win the game. I think the Roosters win the game if they can go up. We haven't seen Corpio having to score 21 or 28 points to come back in a game and win it. So I think if the Roosters can go up, I think we see a different game for Corpio. I think reason over becomes the second option. Sounds funny, but I think it becomes the second option if they go up 14, 21 points. It's inevitable. They got to throw. And I think the Roosters can do that. I think then that goes back to me saying they need a play on special teams. They need a big play on special. They score on special teams, then you kind of hit them in the mouth a little bit. They're going to play in Corpio. It's going to be a crazy, atmosphere. But I think for a team like the Roosters, if you look over the years, the game against Karlstad Crusaders, the game against the Austria Vikings. The Vikings out there, Dacia Vikings. The Roosters have played in some close games as an organization before. So I think we're going to see a surprise. But my question is to the Roosters is, what are you going to do different than you did the last 2 times you played?
I just want to talk about what you said about them losses, about they only lost by this many times. Well, the Steelers have only not lost all season. just to put that out there. They ain't never lost.
So did the Patriots. Until they lost to the Giants. So I don't care anything about
the Steelers. Ain't playing the Giants. They're not playing the Giants.
There's no Eli Manning on your team.
Actually, we have a Bryce Stancomb. You're right.
Oh, there you go. That was a good one.
You're right. With a name like that, you can't lose. With a name like that, you can't lose.
Mr. College.
With a name like that, you can't.
With a name like that, you can't lose.
Mr. College.
I do like your hardcoreness towards them, but like you said, what can they do differently? If they do something differently, this could be a different game than what we've seen before from these 2 teams. My question for the Steelers would be, can you finish them? Okay, and when I say can you finish them, all great things must come to an end, and out of the circle of life, once one life is over, another one begins. So I would say symbolically, the Steelers finishing the Roosters in this game would be the beginning of their dynasty and the end of the Roosters. Would that be okay to say, Q? Them beating them right now would put an end to that whole thing. That would say, okay, this is a new dynasty.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, there we go. That's all I was. Can you finish them then? If you can finish them, and this is one of the situations. This is, the Roosters, their backs are up against the wall. If they don't win this game, we're not going to look at them like we used to look at them. We're not going to look at them as, oh, you can't count them out. It's going to be like, well, they're a good team now. They're not a great team anymore. They're a good team. I mean, no matter what happens in this game, they're going to be a good team. But if they beat the Steelers, I mean, we're going to be saying, they're the Roosters for the next another 4 or 5 years easily. So that's what they have to do. But for the Steelers, my question is, can you finish them? Put all the doubt out of anybody's mind that you are the dynasty in charge of Finland right now.
I'm a little bit disappointed that you didn't say, "Can you put a 50 burger on them?"
Well, if you're going to finish them hard. Put a 50 burger. Matter of fact, put lettuce and tomato. Put up 70. I don't know what kind
of spirits y'all drinking over there, but you think you scoring 50 in this game? You out of your mind.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to score 50. If they get up like 28-0, I see the Roosters holding the ball to prevent 50 over trying to win the game, because the Roosters do that type of stuff. They worry about saving face. The last game is the Wolverines versus Crocodiles. Chris, what you got for the Wolverines?
Can you finally transfer your talent on paper to on the field? So talented on paper, arguably the best roster on paper. Can you now, it's playoff season, anything goes. Can you now put that onto the field into practice? Maybe we might see, I don't know, maybe Slater play some offense as well. Maybe they go all out. Because when he did play offense, he was the leading receiver for this team.
True that. He's good on offense. So he could be an asset, but I don't know if that actually helps them to just add another body on offense. I mean, now I'm just talking, but if you look at the games that they've like played close and lost, outside of the Steelers, I guess I'm just looking at the Roosters and Crocodiles matchups, because when they played the Steelers, the offense was, null and void. It's just nothing happening. But you got to look at their defense. Against the Crocs and against the Roosters, you're giving up too many points. And that's what this game is going to come down to, is which team doesn't give up that last touchdown. And I think when you're playing against the Crocodiles, if the game is even, you trust the Crocodiles to drive down the field more than you trust than the Wolverines. I mean, but at the same time, if the Wolverines give the Crocodiles a little bit of time at the end of the game, you're like, oh man, I'm biting my fingernails. It could go both ways. I feel like I could say the same thing about them. Neither defense is great. So and that's what's crazy, is this could be a barn burner, but both teams have really good defensive lines. So it could go either way. My question for the Crocodiles would be, can you separate yourselves? This is a separating game. Like, you win this game and we have to stop talking about how good the Wolverines are. You win this game and you get all the respect you deserve as being one of the best teams in the league. This team, a couple of weeks ago, the Crocodiles were easily in the 2 seed, and now they're playing as the 3 seed, and they almost were the 4 seed thanks to a coin flip. That's how it comes down to, and we haven't said anything about it. Like, we just said, oh, they're a good team. They're a good team. They have Christian Paul. It's similar to what the Steelers have going, except for I've been praising that secondary all year for the Steelers. I'm not doing that for the Crocodiles. I don't see that secondary as being that good. I see a few good defensive linemen. Their linebacking core is solid, but it's a good team, not a great team. But if they beat the Wolverines in this game when it counts the most, and the Wolverines have everything to lose, if the Crocodiles lose, they'll just be a good team again. I think they've been in the playoffs every year Christian Paul has been there, right? Yeah. He gets them to the playoffs. But, Mark Jackson used to get the Golden State Warriors to the playoffs too. Then they got rid of his ass and they started winning championships. No pressure, CP, no pressure, but getting to the playoffs can't be the goal for this team. You have to get to this Maple Bowl, and this is the opportunity. You have to go through the Wolverines. So my question to you again is, can you separate yourselves in this game? If you're listening to my voice, you're now part of the AFF community. But don't be shy about supporting us. Head over to our website and order some AFF swag. Get a t-shirt for this beautiful summer weather, or a comfy hoodie you can rock all year long. And if you really want the drip, scoop up one of our limited edition snapback caps. Everything you need to represent the AFF community can be found on our website at americanfootballinfinland.com/merch. All right, guys, with the regular season, finally over. I know we got playoffs coming up, but let's talk about some MVP candidates real quick. I think on here I wrote 60 seconds or less, but we know we're never going to stick to that. So let's just talk about offense and defensive players that we think would be MVPs of this season. Chris, throw out a name, man. Who you're thinking and why?
I'm going to throw someone out of a team that's not been very successful this season, but a player that has put up some decent numbers and been very successful. And that's Shea Netter, quarterback for the UNC Crusaders. Yeah, he played all 12 games. He had 353 attempts, 180 completions with a 51% completion percentage. He threw for 2,512 yards, which led the league, and he threw for 26 touchdowns, which was joint top. And he averaged 209.3 passing yards a game, which was also joint top. So putting up some crazy numbers, albeit in vain because the season didn't go great, but definitely an individual performance. And as we said to the start of the season, we weren't really sure about Shea Netter or how he was going to perform in this league because the Maple League is such a big step up from those German regional leagues. But actually, he showed that he can do it. And not only can he do it with poor offensive line and guys in his face all the time. So, hats off to him. Some great numbers from him and definitely a candidate for MVP.
I agree with you 100%. Like, he's definitely one of the guys that should be on the list. I just want to, reiterate, dude was throwing dimes under pressure. Like, it wasn't like he was sitting in the pocket surveying and you watch all his highlights, and then even if you see any photos online, this dude is like about to get hit in the mouth and he's letting go of a ball. And if you watch the play, he's putting it in between two defenders and getting it in a window. And it's really impressive. It's just you don't really understand the magnitude of it because, the team situation. But I'm not going to try to overrate how good of a quarterback he is, but it kind of reminds me of how Matt Stafford was with the Lions, the Detroit Lions. Like, Matt Stafford used to sling that thing, and people just acted like he wasn't because his team was trash. And then he came over to the LA Rams, and the rest is history. But Shea had those type of plays and throws. Like, he was doing some stuff that was amazing, honestly amazing if you watch film. But if you don't watch film, the numbers kind of show that, hey, he was throwing that thing for real. I know he did lead the league in interceptions too, but that goes back to that situation. Like, he has to take more chances than most quarterbacks. Nobody else is taking chances like that because no one else has to. And he was able to be really successful and take those chances at the same time. So hats off to him. He's definitely a name that should be out there. What about you, Q? Who's somebody you think could be an offensive or defensive MVP?
I'm going to go offense. I'm going with Bryce Stancomb of the Helsinki Roosters, quarterback of the Helsinki Roosters. I'm going with Bryce simply for the fact that overall total yards around 2,500. Threw over 20 touchdown TDs. He ran over 5 or 6 rushing TDs. I think he's probably the most important piece to their team, to any team right now besides Lee Anthony Reasonable. I think without Bryce, the Roosters don't win 8 games. Not saying that the rest of the team isn't that great, but I just think he's the glue to that offense right now. He's a driving force. So I think he's very, very important to their success going forward as far as the playoffs. He came in, nobody knew how he would, be his first year, obviously overseas and with such a praised organization. I think he lived up to the standards as far as winning and making it to the playoffs. That's all they pretty much ask of you. And I think he just put himself and put his team in a place to do something great. Maybe not the strongest of Roosters teams that we've seen, the strongest offense. It's not a Miro offense. It's not a Mikko Kokolainen offense, but Bryce found his niche. He found his place with the Roosters. And I think he's the most valuable player, or at least a candidate for it because of his play this year. So my vote definitely goes to Bryce.
Oh, I mean, Q basically covered it all. He's been the instrument. He's the glue to that offense. Like, he's made some good throws. He's made some great rushing touchdowns as well. He's been that American superstar that they needed on that offense. They needed someone to be able to distribute the ball. When you had before you had Brandon Connett, and then you had Miro for those years. So they've only really had two quarterbacks in the last sort of like 5 or 6 years. So now with Bryce, he stepped in and shown his experience. All right, probably one of the most experienced college QBs that they're going to get.
What he had 7 years in
7 years,
college?
right? 7 years, yeah. And he's gone out and he's made a name for himself, and he's definitely put his hat in the ring for MVP candidate. And I think next season the Roosters would be silly not to try and hang on to him.
It's an interesting thing talking about Bryce Stancomb because I feel like he didn't play as well as he could have played. And not saying it in a negative term, I just mean like he left a lot out there. I still feel like he could have had a crazy stat season with this team and what they were doing. But, you know, just the way that they ran, you know, their system and the plays and how they did their personnel, he wasn't able to really show what he could do. And that's actually insane because he still put up really good numbers and he was the driving force of that team. But again, I still feel like you got to bring him back. I don't care if they, you know, go to Maple Bowl or not. You got to bring him back because there was that beginning of the season. You could tell he was good. Like there was no doubt about it. He can sling that thing. He was versatile. He can run the offense. But it took the receivers a while to kind of catch up to him more than the other way around. And once they started clicking, you could see this Roosters team deciding to do what they want in these games instead of what they could. And he kind of gave them that ability from a quarterback standpoint because they didn't have to worry about that at all season. He was money. Like you could never blame him for anything that happened in those games. And that's definitely something that makes you one of the top players in this league.
And he's also doing it without an out and out number one receiver.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have that RJ Long, you know, that Sebastian Sanya. He doesn't have that number one deep threat. Someone who's just going to be a game breaker for you. Okay, Nicole's nice. He's a nice receiver, but he's no RJ Long or Sebastian Sanya, you know? So I think he's done it. It means those stats even more important because of what he's had to work with and the weapon he had. So it like we're saying, next year if they bring him back, maybe they should bring an American receiver as well, or a decent European receiver, a true number one threat.
Yeah, but then they'd have to actually have some faith in their Finnish cornerbacks. I mean, they did bring in 2 American corners. That says a lot about the lack of trust and faith.
But that's only because the Finnish corners that normally start just so happen to be so good they're playing in other places or trying to play in other places. But you're right. The depth of the Roosters are kind of running into that. We developed so good that we're developing talent probably not too fast. Sounds like that too fast, but you don't get the longevity with those guys that you developed on your team because other teams will notice them or college or whatever they might go and do. Yeah, the Roosters are definitely they developed so fast. Like I said, they developed so fast, and like you said, Bryce, if he had the younger Cornette brother this year. It's no telling what that offense would have did. He doesn't have a number one receiver, like you said, but he's still in a good place to make some things happen. But if he had anybody even close to the RJs, to Sebastian, to those type of guys, even if he had, I'd say even if he had Cedric Johnson playing on the Roosters, he had 10 to 12 touchdowns easily. So. Bryce, definitely showed up. I want to see him come back next year. I definitely want to see him come back next year and see what he can do with a little more help.
Definitely. Yeah, name I'm going to throw out. I'm going to go defense for you guys, and I'm going to throw out a name that, I mean, is always in the mix, but for some reason, we don't ever put him on the platform, is Curtis Slater. I'm going to start by saying, Wolverine secondary, just wasn't a good year for you guys. But you got to look at what Curtis Slater does for that team. You take Curtis Slater off that defense, Wolverines don't make playoffs. I said it. Like, they don't make playoffs if you take him off the field because he did things that helped them stay in games all season. He's making plays. He's communicating. I don't know how the communication is getting lost because his corners weren't great ever, but he helps in the run game. He helps in the pass game. And he orchestrates the back end for you. So he does a lot on the field to, make things easier for especially that front seven that just goes and get ball. But then he's a playmaker. He ends up with what, 4 interceptions on the season. 2 of them go for 6. There's a difference in that. There's a difference in someone who can get interceptions and create turnovers and someone who can create points, especially when you're playing for a team whose offense doesn't create points. And if I'm not mistaken, which game was it? There was one game where he got an interception that actually helped them stay in the game. And his interceptions are timely like that. It's not always about getting interceptions. Of course, that's not the only stat you want to talk about, but we've been talking about stats, so I'm throwing out his stats. And then to throw in there, it's not really defensive, but his returning ability is another aspect. I think he also scored a punt return touchdown this season, if I'm not mistaken.
And a fumble return.
Yeah,
and a fumble
return touchdown.
Yeah. So I said defensive player, but he kind of goes for what you actually would look for, and that kind of like Heisman type player that we don't really have a spot for when we talk about awards and things. Is that Curtis Slater makes the team better in all facets. He goes in on offense. They didn't utilize him correctly this year, obviously, but he made a difference. There was times in the games where with him on offense, it really changed what was possible. A player like of that magnitude on the field always gives you a chance to win. When we're talking about, the 4 players from the Wolverines that can help them win for the playoffs, we say Jabari Harris, that's a quarterback. Obviously, he's going to be able to make some impact. We say RJ Long, Sebastian Sane, receivers, who the quarterback's going to try to get the ball to. But then the next person we name is Curtis Slater, a defensive back who also can impact the score of games. He can take points away from a team, but also be able to score for a team, similar to someone like, a Deion Sanders type guy that played in the NFL. Like someone like Jalen Ramsey, great lockdown corner, but he's not going to get you pick sixes. That's why you don't talk about him like you do Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, he scored half the time he got an interception. Same thing with Curtis Slater. He's a ball hawk in the sense that he knows how to get the ball and create opportunities for his team win and whatever they need. And what game was it? It was a scoop and score. He had a game where they were losing and his turnover got them back in the game. And he's done that 2 or 3 times. And it's incredible. I don't have the, specific stats and numbers to say it, but every time you watch his team, that they have a chance to win. And defensively, they're not great, but that they can create those turnovers to put them in a position to win. And he's usually the catalyst. And that's what really makes him one of the best players in the league, and definitely someone I think should be up for, player of the year or defensive player of the year, import of the year, whatever awards y'all got, because he's the catalyst for change in a league that really is just dominated by defensive linemen, in my opinion.
I just wanted to add on to the Slater, man. I got a chance to coach Slater in 2017 and got to see firsthand the work ethic that he has. It hasn't changed in like years. It's almost like he doesn't age in football years, really. I seen a lot of players come to Finland and play over 5 or 6 years. And after year, sometimes you kind of see a decline in play or they take different roles or whatever. But Slater's always been one of those top DBs, obviously leading in return yards for his team, leading in interceptions. He's always one of the top DBs in the league. And, he's had his trials and tribulations, and he's got past it, and he's still one of the most wanted DBs, I think. I think if he plays in Finland, for the next 5 or 6, 7 years, he won't have no problem getting a job. I think there's no team that doesn't want him. Even the Roosters. I think if he didn't go through what he went through, I think he'd still be playing for the Roosters right now. He's just one of those guys that like his energy, it reflects on everybody else on the team. And I definitely think he not just defensive player of the year, but player of the year too. I mean, he's everywhere. He's very, very important to that defense. And I think he'll have some big plays coming into the playoffs for them to have a chance. And I think as long as he's on the field, like you said, they got a chance of making big plays. So, shout out to Slater though, because he definitely show up and show out the majority of the time.
I'm gonna give you some numbers. So you just said that he leads his team in return yards. Well, he actually leads the entire league in punt return yards with 293 on 19 attempts. So he's actually leading the league in punt return yards, and he is third return yards with 295. Yeah, so I'm going to go with another quarterback, and that is Brandon Gwinner of the Porvoo Butchers. Brandon Gwinner, as we know, dual threat QB. He's actually the third leading rusher in the league, and he has a total of 692 rushing yards with 12 rushing touchdowns, which is big numbers for a QB. But to back that up, he's also got his completion percentage wasn't great this season, but again, he's only really had one or two weapons to throw to. But he was 282 attempts, 131 completions. He threw 10 picks. He had 1,890 passing yards, and he was only 2 TDs off of the lead in the league with 24 touchdowns in the air. So real dual threat there by Brandon Gwinner. I think he's matured as the season's gone on, and I definitely think that some team will take him up his leadership next year, hopefully. And hopefully we will see him in the league again next year with one of the teams in the Maple League.
I like Gwinner pick a lot. And we were talking earlier about Bryce Sancombe and, what he has to deal with in number one receivers. I would go as far as say that with the Butchers receiving core, you're looking at the second worst in the league. Like, just be ultimately honest. You have Miko Sepinen. He's a great receiver, great playmaker, but he's not a real true number one. I mean, he does make some crazy plays, but he's not, you have to go to him or that you're going to get this play out of him. And their actual, deep threat receiver is a 16-year-old, or he might be 15-year-old Lucas Arola. And as I've said before, a lot of times that's where his completion percentage was down, trying to throw it to that kid deep. And it just didn't work a lot of times. And it's no knock on Brandon. Honestly, I think the receiver just isn't polished enough to be that type of receiver for them. But it leads you back to, okay, so who's he going to throw it to? He ain't throwing to anyone else. He literally throwing to those two guys. I couldn't tell you another receiver that caught a pass for the Butchers. Except for when Timmy Nwika came in there a couple times at the beginning of the season. And he's a linebacker. I know he was playing receiver at some point, but that's what you have. Also, they had the Italian guy, I think, was playing receiver, but you don't throw him the ball because he wasn't catching it. No offense. But that's what he had to deal with on that team. But he was able to rally. Like, him running the ball was really good for them, and they were able to make that part of their run game. And he's that versatile of a quarterback. And we said it all season. Every time the Butchers were playing, we are like, well, as long as Brandon Gwinner, gives them what he does, they have a chance. And they had a chance in a lot of their games. A lot of the games, without Brandon Gwinner, they probably would have been blown out. But he kept them competitive, even when they were I think they were 4-6 at one point, and we were like, can they make the playoffs? Because we still felt like they were on the fringe because he gave them a chance every week. And ultimately it didn't work out for the team, but Brandon Gwinner definitely showed that he's worth, he impressed me a lot more than when he played in Vasa. You take away Alpha Jallo, obviously things are different, but gosh, again, I don't like to make too many comparisons, but I felt like he did things very similar to what Jabari Harris did for that team with less talent, in my opinion, just a lot less talent. And defensively, they just were, the same boo-boo nonsense in the secondary. But that's just talking about the Dallas Cowboys of Finland. It is what it is. You know what? Another comparison. Tony Romo was a top 10 quarterback his whole career. Never got to the big show playing in Dallas. So, we're talking about, where you're playing and stuff. Voss will be back next year, holler at B. Gwynn. Holler at him. Yeah.
Because Voss didn't have no American QB this year. They had
Alpha. Did. It could be a reunion. They bring him back. They go to Vasa. You could be back in the playoffs. Vasa is still a decent team. I think they just took a year off. Well, I got one more then. Shoot, I'm gonna throw out another defense. Emmett Gooden. Emmett Gooden. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't watch, Last Chance U or whatever show that he was on or something like that.
Yeah, Last Chance U.
Yeah, he's supposed to be famous from that or something. I don't really watch that. So I that never really played into my mind of how he was as a player this year. But what I do know is that I was expecting the Wolverines defensive line to be good. I was expecting the Kuopio Steelers line to be good. So there's players out there that play good for those two teams. I wasn't expecting the Crocodiles' defensive line to be dominant. I was expecting their defensive line to be okay, tough, a little nasty because of Sinioki, but this number 56 was everywhere. Like, and it was ridiculous. And I know he scooped and scored that like 80-yarder, and that was pretty cool for the stats and the video and stuff. But even on that type of play, he chased down the quarterback and made that quarterback lose the ball. Like, he created those type of situations for his team. And all season, wherever he was, there was pressure. There was always pressure. I never really seen him take too many plays off, but I always saw pressure, which meant he was able to impact the other team, both in the run game and the pass game. He didn't just take breaks on run plays and decide, oh, I'll let someone else. He'll chase down a run from the backside and make the play. He was getting in on the tackles. I'm not sure exactly how many tackles he had, but
I got his numbers here for you. Numbers.
Okay, go ahead. Hit me with his numbers.
So he had 34 solos, 30 assists, so a total of 49. He had 8.5 sacks, which was second in the league, just behind Akeem Allen. But he led the league in TFLs with 19.5.
There you go. See, stats always back. If you watch these games, guys, like if you watch multiple games, the stats always back it up. Like the stats really go with if you actually watch the important games and stuff. And this is a guy that I didn't keep up with his stats, but he was everywhere all the time. And what you said that really made sense was the tackles for loss. Because if he only had 8.5 sacks, but he had 19.5 tackles for loss, that's 11 plays that were run plays that he got them in the backfield before they can get down to the line of scrimmage. That impacts games. That means on first and second down, you're behind the sticks because this guy's making the play on first and second down when you're trying to run the ball and establish your offense. So he's forcing you into a situation of third and long where he gets to pin his ear back and then go get your quarterback. He's dictating his own terms. That changes how you select your plays. That changes your field position of your team. That changes how you go into every series. That's the impact he was making from the defensive lineman position. And I think that's something that really needs to be accredited, that he should be considered one of the best players in the league, if not defensive player of the year for sure this year.
He was not only doing that on his own, like he was getting double teamed and triple teamed sometimes, and he was still getting his ass in the backfield. So it just goes to show that, and his numbers probably would have even been higher if it hadn't been for everyone like double teaming him all the time. But he was helping the rest of his team and making his defensive line that much more dominant because he was taking away double teams and triple teams.
Yeah. That's definitely. What about you, Q? Anything you want to say about Emmett?
I kind of knew about him before Last Chance U. He was one of the most highly rated defensive linemen in the state of Tennessee because he originally signed to Tennessee. He was there, got dismissed. You know, if you know the story, you know the story. He got dismissed and ended up going the junior college route. That's how he ended up on Last Chance U. On Last Chance U, he was definitely the best D lineman on the team. So he's been making plays a long time like this. So I wasn't surprised when I seen him. I was like, okay, he coming to Finland. You know, he had a crazy football journey, but everything that he's doing now is expected. He's just one of those players, one of those dominant players. Like, doesn't matter where he plays, he'll have that presence. He definitely showed up for the Crocodile this year. They're in the playoffs. You know what I mean? They're in the playoffs. Somebody like him can make a difference in a playoff game. I think in this game, he will turn up to another level. For them to have a chance in this game, he will probably have one of the best games of the season. He'll have to. But I think he knows that. I think the Crocodiles knew that they got lucky with even having a chance to get him because I'm sure he could have probably went ELF or they probably tried to get him to go ELF. So the Crocs definitely won on his lottery. But he showed up. He's made a lot of plays since he's been in the league, and he definitely get a nod for Defensive Player of the Year.
I said it earlier. He'll be in the backfield just as much as Will Young.
Yeah,
Jabari might think he's a running back. Like, I don't see them figuring out any way to stop him, especially if they decide to move him around, which they do sometimes. And now that they got a big shark out there to take up some of the space, you know, it's easy money for him right now. He's definitely one of the best. I think that's what, like 5 guys that we talked about. That's a decent pool, you know. I don't think there's any. I mean, let's not. Sorry, dude. I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about Lee Anthony Reasonover. But just in all honesty, Lee Anthony, we're gonna give you your flowers, but it's probably gonna be, after the big game, when we gotta lay it all out there. It just, some people are just so good. But Chris, I know you have his stats. Throw out his stats one more time, just so y'all know who is probably easily gonna run away with Player of the Year this year. Go ahead.
Lee Anthony Reasonover, my guy. This is some crazy stats. 12 games, 234 rushing attempts for 1,763 yards.
What's the average? What's the
7.5 yards a carry.
Gosh.
And 30 touchdowns. He averaged 146.9 rushing yards per game.
No, if he had 30 touchdowns in 12 games, that's like 2.5 touchdowns a game, right?
30 touchdowns on the season.
He's almost scoring 3 times a game. Like them Madden numbers, right? Like,
and almost 150 yards per game rushing. That's 7.5 yards a pop.
That's Madden when you playing it on rookie. Like that. It's unfair. It's not even right.
Hey, the dude's a cheat code.
That's craziness. Those are those flowers. Lee Anthony Reasonover is that guy. But I do think it'll be interesting to see, offense and defensive player of the year, because I think that will most likely go to one of these other guys that we named. I don't think there's anybody that we necessarily missed on this. I'm trying to think, is there somebody that probably needs to be on the list? But I think that we hit the major names offensively when we hit 3 out of the 7 quarterbacks. And then 2 defensive players. Those are outliers because, defensive players usually don't get MVP, but defensive player of the year, I think Gooden or Slater, it's going to be easy. But I do think that these are some of the best players. I think this is a good list. I'm excited about these playoffs coming up. I'm really, really intrigued about how this is all going to shake out. Specifically the Steelers, Roosters, because Q is on some crazy stuff. But other than that, like the number 2 and number 3 game in Helsinki, that's going to be really good because they split the series. So you got a tiebreaker. And then also you still have a lot of these guys. There's a lot to prove. A lot of names that we named, they're in the playoffs and they're still trying to prove something with their playoff performances, like prove that they deserve to be there, that they're going to go to the Maple Bowl and things like that. So it's a lot of good things going on. Look good, play good. It's as simple as that. And Ray Athletics will help you look good in their fully customizable team uniforms. Made by players, for players. Ray Athletics produces high-quality uniforms for teams all over Europe. Ray also allows teams to design custom apparel for comfortable travel and workout purposes. Visit Rayer.se today to take your team to the next level. Stay sharp. The 2022 Maple League playoffs kick off on Friday with the Steelers hosting the Roosters. Then the Wolverines and Crocodiles play on Saturday. Our panel of football enthusiasts will pick winners from this week's game on our Instagram account at American Football in Finland. Feel free to find us in the comments with your thoughts. Right now, at the end of the regular season, Chris Green is still in first at 38-4. Finland Swami is in second, 37-5. Spencer is 36-6. Coach Q is 36-6, and I'm in last at 35-7. Do y'all know that we picked 42 games this year?
That's crazy.
That is a lot of games, and Chris only got 4 wrong. But we still got 1, 2, 3 games left. So
that's because he picked the same teams every week.
Takes no chances. He don't do no gambling.
Don't need to take chances. Hey, it's not about taking chances. It's about picking the winner. This is what it is. I'm picking who I think is going to win. That's who I think is going to win. I ain't rolling the dice.
Chris puts his money in stocks and bonds.
I do.
he's not putting them nowhere else. I'm putting mine in a shoebox under the bed. That's it for this episode of American Football in Finland. Hope it was worth the listen. Any last words before we get out of here, fellas?
Let's go, Roosters. Let's go, Rooster. Dun, 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 dun. All we listening to all week is Maniac, Maniac. Dun, 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 dun. That's all we listen to all week, man. It's over with. It's over with for the rest of the league. Wolverines, Roosters, championship game 2022. Let's get ready for it. And make sure you record that. You write that down. You lit liquors.
Lit liquors. What about you, Chris? Any last words?
I mean, I don't know how I follow that, but geez. Yeah, business end of the season. Let's go get it. The four best teams are in the playoffs. Let's go see if anyone can make something happen. Turn some heads.
Yeah. This is where it counts. I want to digress. I want to give a shout out to the women's league. You know, the Turku Trojans and the Helsinki Wolverines ladies are playing this weekend also on Saturday. So that's something that I'll be intrigued about because I already know that the Steelers are going to win and end up going to Maple Bowl. So, you know, that's how I feel about it. You know,
You'll start him off again.
I'm just saying, I kind of know how that's going to go. So if you guys are out and about this weekend, you know, there's a game in Helsinki. Obviously, the Wolverines are hosting the Crocodiles in Helsinki. That'll be on Saturday. But also there's a game in Vanta, the championship for the women. So if people happen to be around the area, you know, I might be out there too. Who knows? So if you enjoy the show, please follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. And don't forget to rate us 5 stars as well. Anything else, anything less tells us that you're a hater. You can follow us on the gram and Facebook at American Football in Finland. By following us on all channels, you'll have a chance to win football merch provided by our sponsors at Rare Athletics. Be sure to follow the instructions in the episode description below. Until next time, never forget
T.
F.
And we gone.
There we go.
American football in Finland.